So, our fifth topic is one that is a little more difficult. I hope the rest of the wines are going to be coming around. You all have cans in front of you. That is the point of the tasting. But we should have, I hope, the same wine in bottles, and that's part of what I wanted to talk about today. It's our fifth, our final topic. I'm gonna say I was a little divided about presenting this trend. I'm a rock solid Gen Xer. There's no way around it, and I grew up in a generation believing that cans meant cheap. Cheap soda, cheap juice. It didn't cheap beer. If it wasn't good enough for glass, you threw it in a can. And I'm guessing a lot of you here are thinking some of the same. But the reality is that cans to the generation today that are out and buying wine mean something different. They've grown up in the craft era. They've grown up seeing craft cider, craft beer. The can is an alternative packaging, not necessarily one of lesser status. It's for the cans are for those moments where glass is not something that can be used, either be it a picnic or be it camping, or be it that you're worried about the carbon footprint. There's a lot of different reasons for why glass would be less appealing. The fact is that here in Europe it's something that's still sort of coming. I think there's still a lot of resistance to it. But when you look at the States, sales of canned wines grew by 43% between June of 2017 and 2018. It's a $45 million industry, and the cans led the packaging growth for the second year in a row. Cans aren't going anywhere. So we can either close our eyes, or we can look at it and say, all right, how can we make this? Let's look at let's look at it as a format, and then see, okay, what works in that format and what doesn't work in that format. It's an alternative to glass, not a replacement. So what I worked out with Union Wine Company in Oregon was that we would get the same wine in bottles and in cans, so that we can truly look at it as a format. Whether or not you agree with the wine that's in there is a different story, but at least we can compare it and see what advantages and disadvantages do the cans offer when we're dealing with the same medium. And so to that end, we should have the same wine in the bottles poured, and it doesn't look like we do. So taste the Pinot Underwood. Everybody's tasting the Finest Food Factory first. Finest Food Factory is from Germany, from Rheinhessen, and we should have the same wines in bottles. Just give me a minute.
As I said at the beginning, this is quite complex for our hosts. We're used to this level of complexity as an everyday matter, so it doesn't bug us. My apologies.
I got a question back to Beaujolais. You said, is Beaujolais Cru production actually increasing, or is just Beaujolais Nouveau production decreasing in the ratio?
But both. I don't have the precise figures, but I think you can pretty much say that very little from the Beaujolais Cru is now going into Nouveau. That's what I was told when I was into Beaujolais, the interprofessional organization, recently. No? Now they really are only using the grapes from the least good vineyards for Nouveau production. Yeah. Because it doesn't make any other kind of financial sense. It's interesting how the market is now driving the quality revolution, from both ends of the equation. The consumers want good stuff rather than something with Beaujolais on the label. And at the other end, the economics of growing the grapes is pushing them in the right direction. Yeah?
Okay, so there's been a slight change. Due to time reasons, I truly apologize. We're not going to be able to pour the wines in the cans and the bottles. We do have them available. I'm happy to stay afterwards and pour it for anybody who wants to compare the format. I don't mind doing that. So we only have the can available right now. Just stay on the side afterwards, and I'm happy to pour it for you so that you can look. It really is interesting to look and see. We tried some of the canned wines. Some people are really starting to take it seriously. There's one company called Sans Wine, rhymes with cans, but it's also without, as in without any additives, without any preservatives, and also without any pretension. That's sort of the model that's going around right now, trying to treat cans as a way to equalize the wine drinking public, and maybe a little too much of a pushback, but a bit of a pushback to get things out of the old school sommelier style, where the somm stands there and has all the knowledge for him or herself, and you as the consumer don't have it. And there's a lot of pushback to that happening right now, which I think is interesting and is good. Anyway, so the Union is probably the largest canned wine in the States right now, coming out of Oregon. Sans Wine is also doing some really interesting things in California, worth it if you can get your hands on it. They are doing single varietal and single vineyards. They're also doing single vintage, so they're really treating it the same way we would treat wine in a bottle. And it's really good, I have to admit.
Yeah, we just tasted all 6 of them, and every single one was really good. And it's all in the 375 ml can. That is identically equivalent to a half bottle, of course. And I mean, one of the big arguments against cans here in Germany, Germany is very ecologically sensitive, yeah, like maniacally, yeah, like everybody is an evil person unless you prove every day with your recycling, dustbins that you are a hero of ecology, yeah. But the truth, if we start to look at that painful thing called the truth, then bottled wine, the largest part of the carbon footprint is the glass bottle itself, by far. That's why already over a decade ago, champagne industry created a lighter bottle, 12% lighter, in order to pull their carbon footprint down. Because they knew it was damned high, because those bottles are heavy. It's that simple, yeah? And the carbon footprint of cans is about 50% of that of wine packaged in bottles, glass bottles, yeah? Okay, the next argument, of course, is that the mining of aluminium creates great environmental destruction. Yes, it is true that the mining of aluminium is not a nice business, but 75% of all the aluminium ever pulled out of the soil is in the recycling loop. Yeah?
The entire thing is recyclable as opposed to glass.
Yeah. And that does strike me as an extremely strong argument. Yeah?
Also, when it's lighter, there's less shipping. There's
Yes,
lighter shipping,
yeah, now we
less
get into
packaging.
the secondary advantages, which are very considerable. Yeah? Of course, if you've been brought up with the glass bottle, which is sealed with a cork and with wax over the seal, which was applied by hand, by the father of the vigneron, with a shaking hand, by candlelight. Of course. If you really need that, you're going to hate all these arguments, I admit it. But we heard the world changes.
And if you think back even to 2000, when you had Jeffrey Grosset in Australia standing in 2000 and saying, I'm going to put my wines under screw cap. And I'm guessing that he sort of had the same sort of feeling in the pit of his stomach that I had today when I had to bring this stuff forward in front of all of you. We can all see where that's gone. Cans are an alternative. They're not replacing the bottles. I'm not suggesting that everybody run out and change their cellars to accommodate 6-packs. That's not what we're talking about today. But we're talking about something for wines that are going to be consumed early, for wines that are consumed in situations where glass maybe isn't as good, for situations where you want to try a number of different things, where you might be looking at a half bottle. These cans are 375 milliliters. That's a half bottle. So that's something that...
We have an industry study from the US where this trend is really rolling, particularly amongst millennials. And in the study, there is an interesting expression, yeah? In a professional academic study, it says, advantage number 1, convenience. You can take the can into locations where wine is not supposed to be taken, or is even illegal. I like that.
I think based on time, if I'm seeing the clock correctly, that we're going to have to bring this call it a day.
On that interesting note.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I know after a long day at the fair, an hour is a long time to ask. Thank you for your patience, for your energy,
yes.
and I hope you enjoyed it.